is the July 4th deadline to you? If
It's important. It's not the end all.
August?
It can go longer, but we'd like to get it done by that time, if possible.
Congress gearing up for the big, beautiful weekend. Lots of moving parts, breaking developments. Senate Republicans now promising a vote before work starts Monday. And a new report says that negotiations on the state and local tax deduction cap are making progress. The Senate parliamentarians striking down key provisions like it's not Medicaid cuts. It was a cap on provider taxes that states use to siphon money off the federal government. It's basically like money laundering. The Senate was trying to stop it. The parliamentarian gets in the middle and says, no. And then she also tried to stop the Senate from banning Medicaid benefits handed out to illegal migrants, and they didn't even ban them. Who wants this? The Senate didn't even ban them. All they wanted to do was reduce the amount of federal funding that went to states that offered Medicaid benefits to illegals. This is all related to money and spending and taxation, and this clearly partisan bureaucrat gets in the middle of it.
I think what we're starting to see is just we're watching it play out, what all of the nuances. You know, one of the things that most of my friends who went to go work at Doge said is, look, we went in, we could easily find where there was all this waste, abuse, fraud, who needed to be fired, who didn't. If you just looked at it like a business, we could make a lot of cuts and really drastically change this. And we kept getting told you can't do this because of Rule 72.3, Section A. And they're like, what the heck is that? And it was some random bureaucratic rule. And so I think we're seeing the same thing play out here, where people have kind of common sense and they say, well, let's go do the common sense thing. But instead, there's either somebody who's an unelected official or somebody who's able to step in and basically play, gotcha with all of these different rules. And so I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is we should really simplify the rules so that people can do the right thing, not simply just have to operate within this bureaucratic organization.
Well, what doesn't make sense to me, and I think this is what you were alluding to, Dagan, is I thought reconciliation is supposed to apply to things that have significant effects on revenue or spending. It's got to have a significant fiscal impact, right? So I do not understand why the parliamentarian would say that Medicare eligibility for immigrants who are not citizens and the spending on that does not count for fiscal impact. Obviously it does. Same for Medicaid, same for CHIP. All of these have financial impacts. So like if the law was everybody's got to change their boy's name to Bill, that has no fiscal impact. But if the law is money we spend, and I'm talking about tens of billions, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars when it comes to Medicare, Medicaid, CHIP for illegal immigrants, that's fiscal. Why in the world does a parliamentarian get to rule against that? And then what they say, well, we're going to fix it. So we're going to rewrite the thing a little bit. And my understanding is a lot of that turns out to be how they extend out the time frame over which these things get repealed. What difference does it make? Why is that a rule? It's incomprehensible to the average person who would just like to not spend taxpayer money on illegal immigrants to get health care.
Stephen Moore, Unleash Prosperity Hotline makes a good case. Senate Republicans could have replaced her at the beginning of the year, and they didn't. And now she is the most powerful person in Washington, wreaking havoc on the big, beautiful tax reconciliation bill, as Stephen Moore is calling it. There's been $2 trillion in budget savings and reforms alone in the last few weeks, where she's ruled that they can now only be passed by a 60-vote Senate supermajority, all of the ones that we've listed here. So look, I do not like this either, but I will say Larry Kudlow on Wednesday said, she's fine, we'll find a way. Don't worry too much about it, except that what Steve Moore is saying is that this means that budget deficit will be higher for years to come.
Right.
And Democrats are now applauding this.
Chip Roy said yesterday, Congressman, who is a fiscal hawk among hawks, said that he thinks that the Senate's hiding behind the parliamentarian,
right?
Because they don't want to cut. They don't want to cut any of this. And,
okay.
and she's letting them off easy. They're like, oh, we're going to get so tough on these provider
Okay.
taxes.
Okay, I get
that-
it now.
yeah.
So she's appointed by the majority leader. She's not supposed to be really political. She's supposed to be looking at it procedurally, as Brian is pointing out. That you've got GOP members that want her fired and are calling for that now, like Tuberville, for example, because you've got the folks who are trying to push their not so GOP agenda, and she is cloaking for it. That's interesting. I also just want to point out that a $9.4 billion, and I know it seems like a drop in the bucket, but it's not a total, waste of breath and energy rescission package passed the House. The Senate now has an opportunity to pass that as well. These are, will be cuts to things like taxpayer funding for public broadcasting, which some people have a big problem with. So as we're dealing with the big, beautiful bill, there are some spending cuts that are trying to be made at the same time.
Every 10 billion counts, Jackie?
Listen, to me, every nickel
10 billion
counts.
On the state and local tax deduction, what has been cobbled together by Republicans is entirely drop new limits on the pass-through businesses, state and local tax deductions as part of this pending deal. It would have raised about $40 billion, but apparently Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent is briefing the Senate Republicans right now on it. This is all from Punchbowl and Laura Weiss. I highly recommend following Laura Weiss.
Blue state businesses would have no cap on their state and local deduction
Pass-throughs, yeah.
in this new idea. That's interesting.
Yep, it is interesting. Rather than rewarding the rich, you're
Well, you just
rewarding-
wonder if that's where the big pressure was coming from then on some of these congressmen, the small businesses. Okay.
We shall see.
We shall
Let's
see.
get it done.